So the way we'll start this off, I think at this point, you heard a little bit from Joe about what his role is in the process. I want to ask Ben, I'll start off with that question. Ben, why don't you describe your role with the S&OP process and how that currently works in your business and what you do with the role, and then I'll give Joe a chance to add on anything additional besides the KPIs that he talked about.
So my role in the S&OP process is I run the S&OP process. We have really three major meetings. One is sort of like at the working level, another one is at the VP level, and then the next one is at the sort of C-suite level. So I run the two. I run the VP and also the working level. And basically I go through the metrics and work on what is really trying to make this supply chain better. I guess from my standpoint, I'm also the business intelligence advanced analytics person. So for me to understand what's going on in the supply chain, I just take that back and try to make improvements on the supply chain itself.
Thank you. And Joe, anything additional you want to mention about your role in the process?
No, I think part of the challenge, and I think, Ben, you may see that, is that the information flow coming in, it's not always readily available to come to you easily. So there's some strong arming from the perspective that there's so many different systems that you have to get data from, and when you have global involved as well, and you might experience some of that, that there is a challenge to try to keep the records straight as you need to along the way. And because of other priorities, sometimes it's chasing down some departments and some key heads to get that critical data, and you always seem that you're up against that. Hey, guess what? You have a deadline. We're going into an executive S&OP, and we have 4 slides. They're still not up to date yet, or you have some data that's kind of outdated. What's going on here? And you're chasing folks down, so you have a little uneasiness going sometimes. That's some challenges there that's going on, but you have to own it and drive it. That's what it comes down to.
Okay, thank you. All right, so next question, and we sort of touched on it a little bit, but here's a question for Ben and Joe. Describe your S&OP cycles from a timing standpoint. Is it monthly? Is it weekly? How does that work? Because this is a difference that I find in a lot of companies as well, is that the cycles vary, the timing varies, and I used to think about it one way, and then I realized that every company has some different ways they do it.
Right. So you'll see a difference between us. I'm a weekly process. So you talked about information flow. I can't have an information flow problem. I mean, I have to keep the pace weekly. So we're a retail operation. We have competitive pressures. You know the split players, Sprint, ADT. They're doing promotions every week. We've got to compete. So our process has to be very fast.
Yep. I think I might explain that typically we have a calendar that each week of the month there's a timing process that goes on. But typically we have 2 meetings a month. The 3rd week is when we have our director level. The 4th week is when we have our executive level. And they're pretty strict. They're booked at a year out, and they're committed with our executives at our director level in the big corporation. Their schedules are booked very quickly, and if you try to reschedule a meeting, it's going to be havoc along the way. And then behind that, we're back scheduling all the meetings and sessions. Again, as I mentioned earlier, there is closure of reporting that comes from global, so you're chasing them down, especially from the cost of COGS and things of that nature. So you're up against that continuously along the way, which makes my timing more challenging along the way. But there is a very set schedule, month over month, and it's published way out in advance, so folks are aware that we have a very committed process.
So in the S&OP, how do you deal with the bigger decisions where the numbers are telling you that the company needs to do something substantial, maybe a manufacturing plant or something? It's a very big decision, but it needs a lot of discussion, a lot of input, versus the tactical, the numbers are telling people to react to something more near term. How do you kind of cope with two aspects of that in the S&OP session.
So a lot of the, because we're a weekly cycle, we're dealing a lot with tactical issues, but there are longer term, we do know about longer term issues because we do have selling seasons, especially during Christmas and just when school starts, like there's probably September month. So in some way, our S&OP process was designed around a lot of tactical issues, and then sort of separate to that is a more strategic plan that's dealt with at the C-suite level.
Yeah, that's a good question. I would have to say, and I'll be honest, that we are more tactical. The bigger decisions are handled and maybe tabled at an executive staff level as need be, or driven by the leader of that particular department. If it's our PS group, VP will drive change if it's critical enough to execute that. But it's not carried over S&OP meeting over to another unless it's a major decision. Like a plant decision is a much bigger scope, maybe at a global level, S&OP handled at that level if it needs to be.
But would they use the S&OP numbers to help frame
absolutely.
the problem?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
In my experience, the output, one of the major outputs was around gaps and closing gaps. So if you came to an executive meeting and didn't have a proposal, we had to make sure that if we showed a gap versus plan, that before we went to an executive meeting, we would have in ranked order what the gap fillers would be. Now that, I assume that as part of my role in demand planning. And so, but that was always a little dicey because I really needed help from sales and marketing to do this. Because, for instance, when I was in my consumer products days, we would have buy one, get one free if we wanted to really drive a lot of volume. But you need the supply chain to align to that. Can they all of a sudden double their volume like this? So you need to do all the necessary legwork and also understand if you have a chance to achieve it and will it deliver the results at the end of the day. But you really, as part of the process, fundamental to me is gap, understanding what is the gap and what is our ability to close it. Now, another way that I think about the year, the annual, the year, if you think about it. So my experience has been in most of the consumer businesses, every year has a flow to it. The first 3 months, everybody's aligning on what their targets are. But then about, let's say for discussion that the year is the annual year. About April or May, you know whether you're doing okay or not. And basically by that time, because to align the plans, to align the supply chain, to get sales and marketing aligned, you really need to go through what your options are. And if you don't line them up by, say, April or May, by the time you get mid-year, it's almost like too late to be able to really move the Titanic one way or the other. So you really have to call it out. You have to make a call. I found how many times in May or June, we are at this point, do we make a decision about how we're going to close the gap? It may mean bringing in a new product launch that we expected to do in the next year sooner in, or some other event like that that's going to be major. So we had to have those solutions in hand to bring the management to say, here are our options. Otherwise, the value is not there in the whole process, at least the way I think about it. Yes, Frank.
There's two words here, or what I've seen used maybe interchangeably, and I don't think it is. Maybe it is, I don't know. People say demand review, people say demand validation. Is one and the other the same, or I think they're two different things, but I think you go to different companies and say, oh, we do the demand review, or another place we go, they'll say demand validation, and the meaning seems to be almost the same thing. I think demand validation is you're sitting down with a couple of people confirming that the numbers make sense, and the demand review, you're showing it to the people saying, here's what they said, like it or not. What do you think? So what's your take on that?
I'm not sure, because we don't use those terms, so.
Okay.
to me,
I can offer from my past.
Oh, okay.
And
Yeah, sure.
forecasting,
That'd be great.
in the interviews when we sat with the forecast people in the sales half, and they were sort of reviewing whether or not the supply chain view met what they thought they were going to do. And then, like you guys were all saying, there's always the pushes and takes on the other side. And then, interestingly enough, the demand validation was the factory guys reviewing our numbers, saying whether or not they were going to make micro adjustments, at their level. So, were they going to bring in more raw materials based upon, the comfort level they had with the numbers we were given.
Interesting.
In our process is that we do the demand review once the three groups are together,
Mm-hmm.
and then they launch it to APO, and before they say go, and you can plan to it, there's a validation that they do. Make sure the systems are linked, and the numbers are aligned, and then they have a 48-hour validation process. Then they tell planning, go ahead, you're okay to go.
Okay.
That's how we work. Yeah.
Here's a question. Who leads your meetings?
So this is interesting for me, because I lead the meetings, and I'm not supposed to be leading the meetings. Because what you want to do really is you want your executives, when you go into a VP meeting, it should be led by the VP. In my case, the VP didn't want to lead, so I became the default. Yes.
And in my sessions, the director leads the meeting, and at both the director level and the executive level. So I work for a senior manager, and they'll team up and lead the senior manager, and the director will lead the director S&OP, and the director will lead the executive S&OP. She went on maternity leave, and I had the pleasure to lead both. That was fun. And again, I got to know who Joe Cervino was.
They got your number.
Yeah.
That's a good question. But as a follow-up question, with these meetings, there are a certain number of people that have to show up at them.
Yes.
And do they show up?
So actually, that was my do's and don'ts.
Say again?
That's my do's and don'ts section. We're going to have a do's and don'ts, but you have to make sure they show up. Because, like Joe said, getting VPs to meet weekly is really tough for them to hold a schedule. But I make sure that they show up. If they don't show up, then I'll cancel them, they have to be there. The question is, we have 3 major VPs that show up: supply chain, finance, and marketing. They better be there.
That's good.
Are there consequences?
I don't have consequences, but to me it's, they have to be there,
When you get CEO driving this stuff, people don't show up at meetings.
Well,
I've had the problem. That's why I asked.
Jerry, prior to Natalie showing up, which she's only been there about a month or so, the previous CEO delegated down to the executive staff. So he didn't come to the meetings. So the executive staff was attending the meetings. And they were pretty gung-ho on being there. At director level, we had some challenges there, especially with the marketing. Now, it's kind of unique. They have marketing there, and you have, 5, 6, 7 different VP brands. So, sales, you can see them being there. Marketing, it's a kind of, we like to have their input, but you can see them put their laptop up and, they're there, but they're not there, you know what I'm saying? So, but they're working. So the engagement was kind of challenging at times, and we had some challenges, and we put emails out, and we started taking attendance. Then we changed vice presidents, and that sort of went out to waste. I took minutes, I put minutes out, that didn't help, and so we're trying to rejuvenate the whole sessions all over again. Global is rolling out this new, improved global S&OP come December, and we're waiting tight and see what that's all about, and see how it affects us here at corporate US. That's that.
Jerry, to answer that question, because I've started a number of S&OP processes in my career, the way I approached it was policy. So there would be an S&OP policy. And one of the first policies is that if for any reason the VP can't make it, they have to designate a second in charge. And that would be actually published as to who their designee would be. So it basically said, look, we understand, if there's mergers, acquisitions, some crisis, people can't show up. But that's not a reason to basically destroy the integrity of the process. Because, as Joe was showing in the diagram, you really want to schedule that out into the future, make sure everybody knows when the meetings are, what the inputs, what the outputs are for the process, and make sure that if somebody can't attend at the last minute, illness, sickness, whatever, travel, that there is a designee in their place that can even sit in and make decisions if necessary to keep the process intact. And that's to preserve, the integrity of the process, which is paramount. Because what happens is, as Joe was mentioning, you're going to have, the one thing we know is that there's constant change in participants. They get promoted, they move, they leave, but the process is what has to continue and get better continuously over time. And that's really, in the roles that Joe and Ben have, they're really responsible to keep the process on track even if the people change. And that's one of the really big challenges is making sure that it doesn't get derailed and that you can continue when there's a change in regime.
Excellent point.
What is the length of time for the meeting at the executive level?
It was 1 hour each, and both boards asked me to extend it half hour each. So an hour and a half max. Typically, we use the whole hour and a half.
So mine's an hour.
Yeah, mine were typically an hour and a half. The question.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, we actually give out a trophy to the regional president that has the best attendance. Just positive from like the S&OP perspective. And they get like a plaque in the showroom area.
I did see that.
But my question's around, I don't know, I think you were saying that you're primarily US based, but do you have like maybe a regional input at Bayer that's involved in the meeting, or is it like primarily North America, or is it global?
There is a global S&OP process that we don't participate. They're not linked yet. I think it's coming, honestly. The businesses are so unique, but they just reorganized. There's 3 main new businesses now that are headed up by our current U.S. North America CEO. She's going over, it's public knowledge, she's going over to our corporate Europe soon. So these 3 main hubs, I got a feeling it's all going to roll up into one. So it's just a matter of time, but we are U.S. CC consumer.
Is there one process that everybody's involved in with the U.S., or there's like different divisions within the company that have their own?
One U.S. based consumer care.
No, I like you said, we're national, so yeah, there's just one meeting.
Right.
That handles the U.S.
Covers global
everything.
And I've had a fair amount of experience with global processes. In one division where I was asked to start a global process, I was asked by the president to start a global S&OP process. And it's an interesting story behind that. He basically said to me, Jay, I missed plan last year. I cannot miss it this year. Can you help me make sure that we're on plan? What I didn't realize was that he was getting ready to sell the business, okay? And so that's why he needed to make sure he was going to make his numbers. So the interesting thing was we established it at the executive level, and I was reaching out to all these countries, the main countries, to get their input to see how the sales were rolling up. And it's interesting because you could tell which countries like overpromised and underdelivered constantly. And so we would know to like override those. And that was part of what my role was, to keep things honest, to make sure he was going to make plan. And also look at all the global launches, because we had in many cases had to pull them forward. You had to say, look, we're not on track, we've got to pull these forward out of the next year. But the key, the end of the story was we did make our plan, which was really important. And then the other thing that happened was, with the main countries providing their input, all of a sudden these regional presidents said, hey, I need to be involved with this. So when you start at the executive level and you start to engage the countries, then all of a sudden the folks in the middle start to go, hey, maybe I can resolve differences in my own regions. You know, if one country is doing really well and another one's not doing well, I can resolve that within my own region, and it doesn't have to go upwards into the executive suite. So every situation is a little bit different, but definitely because of limited resources in supply and in demand, where you want to see that visibility, what I see is an increasing trend to globalize the process so that at the central level you can pull from each region, which means you're pulling from each country. And that takes a lot of coordination and a lot of standardization on processes, like the diagram that Joe was showing. You'd need to standardize that across the major affiliates in order for it to be timely. Because if somebody does it a month later than when you need it, it's not a valuable process. Other questions?
Just curious, for either of you, do you have a difference in how you manage different portions of your product set? So with some, like, it's all statistically based forecast you use, and others are such low volume that you end up using more of, like, you know, what Joe tells you next door kind of thing, or?
It's all flat, all the same process.
Ours is different because we have, you can imagine, mobile phones versus accessories. So of course we do accessories more with algorithms, and mobile phones is basically, we can use historical sales to predict the future.
And then when I work with clients, I typically, encourage them to do an ABC analysis, ruthlessly.
Yep.
Focus on A items in every meeting, B items rotate every 2 months, and C items, see if you can get it off the discussion, or see if you can resolve that offline. Either stop making it, sell it off, get rid of it, but just focus on the, X many items that make up 80% of your volume, and try not to get bogged down in the weeds, because it's very, I can't believe how many companies get really bogged down with it, and you really have to stick, to really the major movers and shakers in your business.
Our biggest challenge is promotionals, bonus packs, IRCs. Those are the biggest, forecasting those, and those demands, that's the biggest challenge. We either have too much of or too little of. That's really our crux. Otherwise, our accuracy would be, world class, and because of that we get hindered down.
Good point.
So, Ben, you mentioned that your business is a bit different because you're a distributor and service as well. Can you talk about how you deal with the servicing aspect of your S&OP?
So actually, I should say that the service we don't do in S&OP because it's really handled, it's a different business. So we're just really device accessories focused, hardware focused. Yes.
But is there a group that does S&OP services?
So no, they don't. It's different. I mean, because in the mobile phone, in some sense, we sell the service along with the phone. So it just goes along. So as long as we handle the sale, the service will come along. So we don't. The dues are definitely get executive sponsorship. I try to adhere to the fact that the vice presidents have to show up, because that's what makes the meeting more interesting to me, because they discuss larger, more comprehensive issues. The other thing is, I deal with a weekly process, so I have to automate. And there's no way I can generate, I'm not generating 50 slides, but I'm generating like 10 to 12 metrics, and I have to do that fast. I can't wait for information. And then probably the final thing for me is don't give up, because I remember Francisco's mentioned it's a journey. It's a journey about getting 3 organizations for me to communicate and talk. And just like a relationship, it takes time to build that relationship. marketing, supply chain, and finance, they tend not to talk. You got to get them to interact and to work together, and that takes time. And things do go poorly, but you got to make it work.
I want to start with the don'ts. Quick story. I worked for a company where we implement S&OP, and we started off with, okay, we're going to start with the executives, but whatever you do, don't tell the owner we're going to do S&OP. I'm like, wait, isn't he the decision maker? Does he spend the money? If we need a new plant, a new factory. Well, yeah, but we're going to make the decisions. So don't do that. That's number one. But the do's, you can do, like I said earlier, there's S&OP stuff. You know, have KPIs. There's informal meetings you can have, drive processes through an organization. What you need to do is have those shared KPIs. Like Ben said, take it from top down. Every CEO believes that S&OP, it's a process. You can call it whatever you want to call it. It works. But the shared KPIs are critical. You need to have that communication level is very, very powerful. And one other thing you need to do is continuous improvement to S&OP. Year over year, I look to either IBF or APICS or Google, anything, now Twitter, Kim, social media, anything. Let's get that out there where we can. To look at improving our S&OP process to make it better. You know, keeping the folks engaged is a challenge. Their mind, they got bigger fish to fry, bigger things going on, but they need to be there to keep our operations going forward. And they need to be engaged on making good, solid decisions and knowing month over month how we're doing. And they feel good about it along the way. So those are the couple of do's that are very critical. So.
Excellent.
I've got a question for Ben, I think, and maybe Joe. If a VP fails to send in or attend and sends in a subordinate, and the subordinate makes a decision at that point, either it cowered into it or overwhelmed or just makes their best decision, and it's wrong, where does the blame go? To the VP or to the subordinate?
See, I haven't had a situation where they really actually said that they were wrong. But the subordinate definitely does, he communicates it to the VP. I think there is that communication, so they have to take the ownership. I haven't nailed somebody for being wrong, but yeah. I mean, there's things that happen. A good example, I think, I don't know if it happens with you, but you do a promotion. Ever do a promotion without product? That happens. I mean, it just happens. That's tough. Yeah. And but take the blame. I mean, we probably take the blame as a group.
Yeah, I think there's because there's a lot of collaboration in our group, and there's everyone tries to help each other out. If they see someone making a sort of a crazy, wild decision, we'll say, well, let's wait for Bill next month, the VP to come in. I'm not sure if that makes sense. Let's pull back a little bit before we move forward. I'd like to get his input, or there might be some of that posturing going on just in case that someone at a higher level might say, I'm not comfortable. I want Gary there. That might happen.
I'm the last one.
Okay, any other questions?
Yeah, in terms of the agenda, how do you develop that throughout the monthly cycle? And the reason I bring that up is because this is meant to be a decision-making forum, but also we're going to be looking at trade-offs, pros and cons. And so how do you define that level of granularity that you need to be able to have a meaningful conversation with the executive team?
Our agenda is set. Typically, we cover any kind of follow-up from previous meetings as number one. Anything carried forward. Also, we also want to do a carry forward from the director to the executive level. We constantly want to wrap up our director level saying, we're going to be meeting with the executive next week, guys. Any surprises? Anything we need to share? We just spent an hour and a half together here. What do we need to tell our executives that we want to bring forward? That's very critical along the way. Also, in our monthly agenda, we have something called a strategic topic. So it's a new flavorful topic. Maybe talk about innovation. Maybe talk about plant accuracy or packaging volumes. Or we always have a new topic that we want to bring some new players in to add some new flavor into what's happening along the way. So the agenda is pretty constant and it's pretty much the same month over month, other than some new carryover action items that had to be followed up. And it's my job to make sure that the VP or the director follows up on those actions as a reminder.
Yeah. We're coming up with a new approach as of lately. About 2 months ago, we started issuing pre-reads 48 hours prior to the meeting.
Excellent. We do that already? Excellent point.
Yeah.
Yep.
So the day before, we're getting
Yep.
from the BU president all of the key topics and questions that he wants to make sure we discuss at the meeting.
Perfect.
So that has proven to be very effective because now we walk in and we know exactly who needs to be there.
Excellent.
What are the decisions that we're expecting to
Perfect.
And that's all. So
Right, excellent.
Especially if it's, as you mentioned, decision-oriented, because I think you touched on a key point there. The whole purpose of this process is decision-making. Because if you don't have decisions, then the leaders are going to say, why do I need to be here? I can read about it.
Right.
You can send me an email and summarize it. But if you make it, that it's a decision-making meeting, they're going to find a way to get on the phone, get on a conference call, could be 12-hour time shift. They'll find a way to get into it because they know there's some key decisions that they need to weigh in on or have an opinion on, but they also may want to use that forum to ask the other departments, as Ben was mentioning, what do they think about it? If they need to do, a new promotion, is everybody on pace with it? And I've seen presidents go and say, are you on board? Are you on board? Are you on board? That's really powerful in a meeting like that when you see that. That's a great point. I feel if it isn't decision-oriented, you've got a suboptimal process. Good question.
Good point. Thank you.
Thank you.
And one last question, if you don't mind. How do you know you are in a mature S&OP process? Can you sort of define that? What best in class look like?
Honestly, I don't think that Bear is in a constant state of improvement. We compare ourselves to our global friends, who they believe are the experts, especially in Germany. They always seem to outdo us. Am I on camera? Kim, can we cut that out? Whatever you do, I'll give my resumes out. But it's a continuous, like I said earlier, it's a continuous improvement process. I've seen it when I've been with the company about 14, 15 months now. I've seen S&OP decks from 3-4 years ago. It's a huge improvement from where they were, and there's room to grow. It's very stagnant right now, and it needs to infuse some new intelligence in there. It's the same old, and I'm like, why are we putting stuff in there? No, it doesn't matter. I have $80 million of bonus packs. Who cares? So what? I'm having that slide in there. What's that? How's that helping the executives? Yeah.
I think for me, it's maybe I'm a newer process than it is. I'm only a couple of years old, but I look at it as attendance. When I'm mature, I know that people want to come and they really want to participate, and all the groups make sure that they show up. So I think that to me that they're communicating, we're growing together. So yes, I think we're in constant growth too. But at the same time, I'm finding more and more want to participate.
This is a great question because in my consulting role, I get a question about maturity. So we actually run sessions to assess maturity levels. So where are you? So we have, like, for instance, my company has 4 stages: reacting, anticipating, collaborating, and the last is orchestrating, which is like, I know where I want to go and we're all, aligned to get there, how we're going to get there. So basically, the kind of session is, you might have all the executives or all the people that participate in the S&OP meeting kind of say, okay, where do we think we are now? And have people step through that process, they put stickies on the wall, whatever. And then we say, well, where do you want to be? And then we talk about, okay, it doesn't have to be the last stage, we're not expecting that, but maybe it's the next stage. And then what do we need to do specifically to get to that next stage? So to go from reacting to anticipating, you know, you start really a dialogue, and it's about the process, improving the process. So it's really important, as Joe was mentioning, continuous improvement. That's one of the examples of saying, where are we, where we want to be, and what are the steps we're going to take to get to that next level. And that's really, I think that's so important to understand where you are in your maturity, you know, phase of things, and what you need to do to get better, because guaranteed your senior executives are going to, if they're not giving you ideas, they're going to look to the people like Joe and Ben and say, how do we take this to the next level? Okay.
Yes.
I think that wraps it up.
Great job.
Thank you.
Great.
Before you guys sit down, just a little token of our appreciation for West Jersey. So Ben, thank you. Great job. Appreciate your time. Well done. Jen, same.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Joe, yourself as well.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Couple more things, guys, I'll let you go. Number one, I was remiss before, and I apologize. Usually what we do is we ask people that either haven't been here in a while or are brand new, maybe the first time at the meeting, just stand up and introduce themselves real quick. So when we start over here.
Yeah, my name is Hisham Abdul-Joud, and I work for Bayer, customer care with Joe. I've been there for 3 months, and I'm a deployment analyst. I love it there. It's a great company.
Thanks for coming.
Hi, my name is Karen. I just moved here to New Jersey. I come from APICS, Boston. And I'm here working with Reckitt Beckinsale as a supply chain best practices lead.
Welcome. Thanks for coming. Are you understanding?
I'm Phil Hughes. I haven't been here in a few years. I used to be in supply chain within Chaloosa, and I'm currently in a customer-facing role with BT Global Services in New York.
Awesome. Thanks for coming. Anybody else? Francisco?
Yeah, Francisco Marin. I am a senior director of Pinnacle Foods in the Pro Supply Planning Organization.
All right. Thanks for coming again. It's been a little while, right?
I've been here in a while. So, my name is Blair Whitehead. I'm the regional America's demand planning manager for McKay Medical Systems in Wayne, New Jersey.
Excellent. Thanks for coming. 2 more things I'll be done. Number one is social media. Kim is kind enough to be our consultant. She actually has her camera. If you want a professional photographer, or picture I should say, before you leave, Kim will do that for you.
For your LinkedIn
For your LinkedIn.
or Facebook.
Okay. And then number 2 is surveys. Ben's kind enough to usually send out a survey electronic. Trying to save a couple trees. Be so kind to send that back. Speaking of continuous improvement, give us your candid feedback. Thanks for coming. Have a great weekend.
Thank you.